Tony. Well, let's talk more about the law enforcement response to Tuesday's attack.
Acevedo, former chief of police for the cities of Miami, Houston, and Austin, joins us now live to discuss. Thanks so much for your time being with us here on KVUE this afternoon.
No, thanks for having me on.
Well,
Sad it's under these circumstances.
Me as well. As we just heard Tony report, the first officers to arrive at that elementary school earlier this week knew that shots had been fired. What should local officers be doing? Those officers that are the first to get to a scene like this, what should they initially do?
Well, you know, our tactics have changed ever since Columbine, and officers are now trained that when their shots are ringing out, we get paid to put our lives on the risk and run towards the gunfire. And so, you know, in this case, it seems that at some point happened. But then when we know children have been shot and presumably bleeding out, time is of the essence. And so there are a lot of tough questions that need to be answered as to why it took an hour to breach and enter that classroom and end the threat.
Does the fact that it was a school change the protocol at all?
No, I mean, look, the tactics start after Columbine, which was a high school, but whether it's a school, whether it's a supermarket, a place of worship, when gunshots are ringing, the expectation, the training that police officers receive in this country is that used to be we wait for 4. Now in Houston and other places, they're training that the first officer that arrives puts it out and starts running towards the threat and tries to eliminate the threat and engage the threat. And so, again, there are a lot of tough questions. But until we get the entire timelines, no one should form, I think, final conclusions on this matter.
You know, Chief, as we're working to try to understand this, when you do have multiple law enforcement agencies coming, you know, frankly, from across that region, and they're responding to an active shooter, an active scene, how is a plan coordinated?
Well, first, you have to realize that there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of agencies at all levels of government. And this, it seems like you have federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies, county agencies. And so there's a lot of confusion. And quite frankly, the officers have to quickly put together a react team if they have multiple officers and go run towards the threat. The reports that I've seen is that they used a key finally an hour later to enter it. Well, that key should have been available the entire time. And then the question that I would have is, were there windows? Was there another way to either breach or engage the suspect during that hour? Because whether or not shots continue to ring out for that hour, we know for a fact that we had a golden hour. This is a rural community to get those kids, recover them, triage them, and get them going to a treatment center and evacuating them. So it's going to be a tough few weeks, months, and maybe even years as they put this together.
You know, this investigation is ongoing. We know that. But we also know a similar situation happened at a school shooting in Parkland, Florida. The responding school resource officer there has been charged with a crime. Do you think that's a possibility here? Should these officers maybe have to answer questions and maybe have charges against them?
Well, you know what? I think it's premature to talk about any of those things. We have to have an investigation. We have to have a thorough investigation. If the state, because they are involved as one of the agencies that responded, is smart, I would bring in federal partners or an outside entity, potentially even from outside of this state, to investigate this. There's going to be, no matter what we end up determining, there's going to be a lot of mistrust in the report. Unfortunately, in the environment that we live in here in this country, and it's going to be it's going to be a long time before we get all the answers.
So much for us to continue to follow. Acevedo, former chief of Houston, Austin, and Miami Police, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you all.